Welcome to the Hello FirstName podcast. The Hello FirstName podcast revolves around the term personalization and is brought to you by marketing author Rasmus Holy, founder of Omnichannel Institute and Chief Experience Officer at the marketing automation software company Marchitechs. The podcast is based on the book Hello FirstName. Each episode is based in turn on a chapter from the book, followed by a discussion of the very same chapter with an expert marketing practitioner in the following episode. As always, you can buy the book on Amazon or other bookstores. You can also choose to listen to it all for free on your favorite podcast service. You're also very welcome to download the abstract of the book for free, and all models, of course, are able to download. All downloads are sponsored by Agilic. I'll make sure to put a link to everything in the show notes. But you can always connect on LinkedIn, and I'll be happy to reply and help out. Hello, and welcome to the Hello FirstName podcast. Today we're going to discuss chapter 20 from the book Hello FirstName, and the chapter is called Marketing Technology, which, as you all know, is a pretty important part if you want to do any kind of marketing today. So the chapter was actually mostly written by Frans Riemersma, whom was my guest in one of the former episodes. So I decided to find another one who was equally cool and knowledgeable about this topic to help me discuss this time. So I've invited Martin Wammen. Martin, you are the founder of Marchitechs. You have also a long history within both like classic direct marketing and even software as a service companies where you work for Oracle. So maybe you can, instead of me trying to sort of unravel that, welcome to the show, first of all. And maybe you can introduce yourself and sort of your work to the listeners.
Yeah, sure. And thanks for the invitation. So I've worked with marketing technologies for all my career, so I started out back in '94 in a role as database marketing specialist. So that was kind of the coolest thing you could do within marketing technology at that time, and been part of the whole emerging of the internet and a lot of technologies that have gone and left. I've seen from both the technology vendor side and the client side and the advisory side. So that's kind of my background into this topic.
Mm-hmm. And but now you are with Marchitechs, which is I think a boutique Martech consulting agency. Is that a fair label to put on it?
Yeah, I think it's a fair label, especially as we've only been in the market for a year, so it's still quite early days. But kind of the vision and why I started up Marchitechs is I've been in so many different roles as an advisor, but it's always been linked to some kind of technology or some kind of operating model, and I really wanted to be the trusted advisor. Yeah. So being completely free of any dependencies to specific technologies or specific operating models, and also trying to get in and become the trusted advisor equally for the CMO as the CIO, because a lot of marketing technology, the sales path is to bypass the CTO and go directly for the CMO and sell them a software as a service platform. And it becomes a bit uneven, the adoption of technology, if the technology leadership is not part of it. So that's really.
I think it also changed, because I remember looking back it sounds like eons ago, when I think there was like this prediction from Gartner that by 2017 the CMO would outspend the CIO in terms of technology spend. But then something happened. We had the GDPR and the CCPA in the US and so on, which for me at least feels like that really flipped the picture a bit back. So now it's more an equal partnership, or maybe even sometimes in favor of the CIO. I think that resonates with what you're saying there, that this connection needs to be there if you want to be taken seriously and if you want your projects to succeed.
Yeah, definitely.
Some key milestones. I know you've only been in business for 2 years with Marchitechs. Anything you'd like to sort of highlight, or that you're particularly proud of, or something that sort of made your day in that?
Especially the long-term relationships I've had with clients, also before I started up Marchitechs. That's something I'm proud of, and taking them through the full end-to-end circle. So just both defining the Martech strategy to make sure it aligns with the business strategy and the architecture and the roadmap and the business case and the vendor selections and scoping the projects and helping them onboarding and adopting the platform. So kind of helping them through the full life cycle of a Martech investment.
Yeah. And sort of, and it's the process that you defined, or the success that you feel that the clients are getting from it, or what is it in particular, sort of?
So now it's in some of the projects I have where we are in the onboarding. It is to see that strategy was right, and that the company can actually adopt the technology, and they know what the use cases they want to execute on it, and they have the ability to do it. So seeing the real operations of what I started out as a strategy session, that's really fulfilling to be able to do that.
Yeah. I think it is from this chapter actually that we have this this graph in the book, which is really about the hype cycle and how an technology, or specifically a Martech technology, a marketing technology implementation follows the hype cycle. And if you don't get the proper guidance as in what you're describing here, then there's a really big tendency or danger of overinvesting and then having to disinvest and then reinvest if you don't sort of squeeze the hype cycle with proper guidance from both angles. Choosing a vendor is a big topic, not only here in Agilic, but for, I think, any company that wants to purchase a new stack or a new tool. From your experience, what are sort of the most common challenges that companies face when selecting a marketing technology vendor?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of first selection process of marketing technologies where the company is buying within the category for the first time. So uncertainty of the needs and also knowing what does good really look like. So what is the purpose of that platform they're looking for, and how is it going to drive value, and how do you get aligned on different stakeholders that is part of both the buying decision process, but definitely also the implementation and operation. So understanding and being a bit, ahead of the curve and have some real life examples of what this could look like. That is really what is driving successful vendor selections and adoption from my point of view.
So what good looks like in terms of the customer experience, or in terms of what you can expect from a tool, or can you elaborate a bit on that?
Yeah. It's a bit of both, I think. So what should the tool provide of capabilities? And if I have these capabilities within my operations, what are the use cases I should execute, and what should be the expected business value of these use cases? It's really to be able to connect the dots, that you have a clear picture of what this could look like. Because it's not just the experience, it's also the operations to deliver the experience. And it's also sometimes how the technology is built, so it fits into your stack. So that's kind of why it's not that trivial just to select any platform.
Yeah. And how about the organizational side of things? I guess there's also what does good look like perspective on how you build up a team and how you structure insourcing, outsourcing, and stuff like that.
Yeah, definitely. And there are some different models, I think, there in terms of maturity of the organization, but also the context. So it's not just like you will progress, everybody will progress the same way and first have, a small marketing automation platform and then grow from there. There is definitely different roads in there. But the context of the organization is setting a lot of direction and also some boundaries of what you can do. How big is your team? How specialized is it? Do you work in an international environment where each market has a lot of independency, or do you work more in a centralized organization? So the organizational context is definitely setting the direction for what should be how should your stack look like, and what are the good platforms into that stack.
And I guess even though you maybe sometimes know what the right tech fit would be, getting people aligned on and agreeing on that, so that everybody's on board and they don't fight each other once sort of the signature has been signed, but actually collaborate on getting meaningful marketing done with the technology. Probably also a thing that I could imagine would do like a lot of workshops and stuff. That's at least what I remember from my days of consulting.
Definitely, and and getting, creating a space where all stakeholders can be actively involved in setting the direction, I think is really important. And I found out that, even though it sounds really boring, that architecture discussions are really good for alignment.
Yeah.
And there needs to be architecture in a combined business and technology perspective, but kind of talking about what does a blueprint look like and what capabilities does a blueprint deliver is really a good way to take something that is really complex, because normal company has those 30, 40 different platforms, and if you count the different data repositories, there's even more. So being able to facilitate the totality of the Martech stack and then also simplify it so you understand the different directions is really important, I think, in my work.
Interesting. Let's move into the chapter, namely chapter 20. So that actually describes the chapter starts with this narrative where Norsk Rikstoto, which is a Norwegian horse race betting company, are choosing. Actually, they thought they were about to select a marketing automation platform because their old one was basically end of life, and then after going through a few rounds around the hot stew, they along with the agency and so on, they figured out, well, actually they're looking for something a bit more profound, and not only sort of replacing the communications engine, but also looking into how different parts of the company can actually utilize and leverage data streams and data sources for real-time interactions and reporting. This sort of situation, as well as this, wow, things were bigger than we imagined. How common is that sort of enlightenment or attitude in these situations?
Yeah, I think it's a very common situation. As the Martech staff has involved, it has often, in most companies, it involved within domains. So performance marketing, their stack is involving within their domain, and e-commerce and CRM and sales and so forth. But then you end up by having needs to really connect the data and the experience across the domains. So you can't just fix it by switching a platform within your domain. You need to see the greater picture, and you need to get it aligned and interconnected. So I think it's really common, and it's also there where it's the first time for most Martech organizations that have been used to operate and plan and strategize around the domain, and now they have to go cross domain. So that is difficult. And also when you go cross domain, you have to involve your technology organization, because they will be responsible for your transactional systems, perhaps not your systems of engagement within your sole domain. But when it gets across and it becomes more transactional, you need to involve them. So it feels like a bigger obstacle today to get a new marketing automation platform than it was 5 years ago.
Yeah, because the question blows up somehow.
It does, definitely. So you need to have kind of being able to see the big picture and the direction you want to go, and then focus in on what I am solving for right now. So it's kind of the long line and the short line to be effectively, and to also to be strategically in these situations.
Yeah, it sounds like you positioned yourself in a sweet spot as an advisor there, because definitely this is, and I can say from a Martech vendor's perspective, this is also what we see. I'm wondering there's all this talk about best of breed, best of suite, which is maybe a bit old-fashioned. I know that Frans in the book is talking very much about best of integration, and composability is a very big word right now. So do you think how will this change in the past? Will we get to a place where everybody's sort of doing the groundwork now with a composable stack, and then in 5 years time from now, then it's easier to switch out one component, whereas today the conversations are super profound and everybody needs to do a huge architecture every time?
Yeah, I still think that companies will choose between different kind of archetypes of reference architectures, where one of them kind of be go integrated or go more composable, and those have nuances as well. It's not just like it's going to be one fits that suits everybody. Some companies really fits into a composable architecture, and other companies doesn't really fit there, both technology-wise and organizational-wise. So I don't think there's going to be one winner, but it's really important to also to be able to drive progress in the discussions and in the setting the direction for your Martech target architecture, to kind of say what's on the plate here. Does it make sense for me to look into an integrated marketing suite, or should I go composable? And if I go composable, then what are the different flavors that I should be looking for? So you don't try to evaluate the whole world every time you need a new platform, but it's a good way to kind of to take the different items off the plate, and then make sure that you're focusing on what is going to drive value for your business.
So is it easier? Is the process easier if you just go with a suite, or is the sort of the chain of decisions the same, no matter whether you end up with one or the other?
Yeah, I think it's kind of it's almost the same, and then there's also, if you look at how the suites have evolved for the last 5 years, they are becoming so broad in their capability scope. So they cover both, the CRM, the CMS, the e-commerce, the CDP, the advanced analytics, the whole core of the Martech stack. So they become almost kind of an enterprise architecture of one system does almost everything. And from that perspective, it's not that many companies that fits into that strategy anymore, because you need to be a really large enterprise to get the full value out of an enterprise grade integrated suite. And then if you are a big enterprise and you have a lot of different fragmented stacks there, and you want to consolidate into one big integrated platform, that migration project is really hard to do bimodal, because you want to kind of do both your core transaction systems and your core master profile, and then your engagement systems into the same suite. So even doing a bimodal migration from a fragmented stack into the current scope of a full Martech stack suite is really, you need the stamina to do that as an organization. That's not easy. It's a big task.
Yeah. And maybe considering, I don't know, so often when I'm out there speaking, I mean, I do this a lot in the Nordics, in particular, with the sizes of the Nordic companies. I mean, we don't have that many enterprise businesses. Of course, there are a few, but sort of the average size of the marketing team, I think in Rikstoto, they are 3 people. And I mean, driving a huge wall-to-wall suite implementation, I think that just wouldn't have been possible for them.
No, probably would be too big a task for them.
Switching a bit topic here, because in the chapter we discuss the need for a centralized customer profile.
Yeah.
And we claim, at least in the book, that it's very important. And we talk about how companies can achieve it. Where do you see the role and the need for the golden customer record, or the single customer view?
Yeah, it's definitely something that I spend a lot of time working with and advising clients around. And it's also been, on the topic as a rise of the CDPs, so the customer data platform, and the real-time capabilities of being able to orchestrate a customer profile. So it is a centerpiece of every Martech stack today, is to have a centralized customer profile. But it also comes in very, in different flavors, and it fits into different architectures and into different contexts. So when I look into the kind of the customer profile architectures, I work with 3 different reference architecture. So one is the composable CDP. So that's where you have started out consolidating your customer profile data into a customer data warehouse or customer data lake. And it's really been, for analytics purpose first, and then you're using it as a repository to activate and to feed your other marketing platforms. That's kind of one approach. And then the other approach is to go into a real-time CDP. So that's really focusing on unifying the customer data in real time and making it actionable for the channels in real time. So not storing the data for historical analytic purposes as a first use case, but more for activation. And then
So that
lastly,
would be the case of Telium, for instance.
Yeah. And then the last case is the more integrated CDP marketing suites. So a marketing suite that has a CDP as a core service. And there it's kind of moving from data orchestration into more journey orchestration, and perhaps some of the platforms even have last mile personalization in email and web and so forth. So choosing what is the right fit for your company in terms of what architecture should I go for my customer data profile is the first direction you need to take, and that has a lot to do with your use cases you want to execute, how real time they are, and what kind of organization do you have to have a strong enough data engineering, data science teams to go composable and industrialize on top of that, or what is that context that you're looking into?
That makes sense. So there's definitely a lot of talk about CDPs, and for good reason, as I hear it, also with the need for this single customer view, which is basically where you can at any time point to a central place and say, listen, I want any information about this particular customer. We might add for the ones who are not familiar with the topic. There's all, I mean, I look back 7-8 years, there was a lot of talk about DMPs and data management platforms, which was more from like an advertising perspective. That seems to have totally gone away. Is that because of the shift away from third-party cookies? People are banning that and going more into first-party data, or where did the DMP go? Basically, the same way as a third-party cookie is going, or
it completely disappeared, and it disappeared from the point of view that third-party cookies is going away. It also disappeared because it was really hard to keep the data privacy levels that you wanted to do within the technology. So shifting away from third-party pixel-based targeting into first-party server-to-server data sharing with paid media platforms. That's where the future is going. There's no doubt about that. But it's also, when you do that, you're also changing kind of the concept around your data privacy and your consent. So just think about, you go into a website, you accept the marketing cookies, and then you accept that there's a third-party cookie being set on your computer, and a pixel will fire to a third-party media with some information about your device. When you're going cookieless and into the domain of a CDP, then most of your data is going to be at some point attachable to a PII identifier. So my email address or something.
Personal identifiable information.
Yeah. So your consent management is now something about data that is related to me as a person, not my laptop or my mobile phone. So you need to shift your whole consent policy and the way that you govern your first-party data when you use it to activate towards third-party media. So that's a new challenge that has come up around the kind of the cookieless consent management and how to do that.
It goes deeper somehow.
It goes deeper because the data becomes so personally identifiable. So you also have more control about who you're sharing it with, but you also need to put in more transparency towards the consumer, because it's a really rich profile that you are sharing with a third-party vendor.
Yeah. Interesting. And how do you handle that as a company? What is sort of how do you manage that change? And what are sort of the first? Is it about defining the right enterprise architecture, or what is sort of the top 3 advice?
Yeah. So my top 3 advice to going into this discussion is to first establish that you want to work with data privacy as a competitive advantage among the IT and the business and the legal stakeholders. And a way to do that is to say we are focusing equally on data monetization, on consumer ethics, and business risk. Not just business risk, not just consumer ethics, not just data monetization, but all 3 dimensions, so that your new data privacy strategy is trying to give you a competitive advantage. Because sometimes it is a competitive advantage to be the steward of the data for the consumer, and not just monetize, all the data and just do whatever you can do at the lowest level of data ethics. So making sure the business leaders are agreeing on that data privacy strategy, and they do it in a point of view where they're trying to create a competitive advantage.
What's the general tendency out there? Are people? So it sounds like there's almost a game of sort of white hat, gray hat, black hat on this. What's the average shade of gray out there? Are we? I would assume that in the Nordics we're pretty white hat.
Yeah.
But we're getting our asses kicked by someone who are less white hat when we're trying to sell stuff in the Nordics, or
yeah, I guess to some extent. I think when you put the lights on these issues and you do it in a transparent way, the business stakeholders, they tend to be a bit more focusing on data ethics than just data monetization. If you don't put the light on it, you will go, more data monetization and
more gray.
hoping, a bit more gray, and hoping no one discover. When you put the lights on it, you know that you have to be accountable for your business. So you need to make some good decisions here.
I think that's a positive effect of not only GDPR and the compliance reasons, but also the ESG focuses that there are different places. I know that at least we spend a lot of time getting an ESG report together that also touches upon stuff like this, like data privacy and such. So, all right. We in the book we also discuss this topic which we call the system of record, like a type of system that you cannot turn off without the revenue really being heard, and how that correlates with Martech stack maturity. And we mentioned sort of 5 systems of record within Martech stack. So obviously the CMS, CRM system, marketing automation platform, e-commerce, and CDP. How should companies prioritize implementing these systems?
Yeah, that's a really good question, and there's not an easy answer to that. But I
didn't
think
expect that.
but if you take kind of a personalization point of view, like your book is,
which I like to.
then if your main challenge is to be able to follow your consumers across channels and do that in real time, your focus should be on the CDP. Now, if your main personalization strategy is to create content that can be consumed for personalization across all your channels, you should probably focus on the CMS, because the untold secret of how to do personalization at scale is to start with content efficiency, so the ability to produce content super efficient so it can be consumed as fragments across channels, and then you increase the degree of targeting positioning. Instead of having a lot of data and targeting position, but it's too costly for you to deliver the content for a personalized experience. So kind of balancing that, and if you have tried to do personalization at scale successfully, you know that secret, and you're probably not telling everybody about it. But it's kind of where you get to success at scale. So if you're not focusing on your content platforms and your content delivery work streams, you will never be successful with personalization at scale.
I'm so glad you mentioned that, and I'm sorry that I may already have given this secret away, because that is kind of the bow tie of personalization, where you have the insights end, which is sort of very fed by CDPs. You have the insights part of the bow tie, and then you have the content side of the bow tie. And so personally, I've seen, and for good reason, that it's very often the people who are very much into data and tech that have been driving the personalization projects. And indeed, this has been, I think, a child of the fact that there's been so many issues with data. So that people have almost forgotten and maybe even to some chance neglected the whole content side of things. And if there isn't any content, then there isn't any personalization. And if there's only one piece of only one piece of content, I would suggest that there isn't any personalization either. It's just a matter of targeting, maybe.
And when I go into projects where I'm trying to help clients, improve their content efficiency, I always said that the target should be that if you look at the FTEs you have today, the resources you put in to create content for, perhaps just one size all experiences across channels. You need to be able to, with the same amount of resources, to output at least 10 times as much content, because otherwise you cannot do personalization.
So we're talking about the order of which you would implement which of the sort of systems of record. Talk about the CMS. If you're sort of low on content, really getting that fixed first, or you'll end up with a lot of insights and nothing to do with them. Or vice versa, getting the CDP thing right as well. Where does the marketing automation platform fit in sort of the order of how you implement systems?
Yeah. So most companies, if they have an industry standard level of marketing maturity, they will have a marketing automation platform.
Yeah.
So it's seldom we come out to a client that they don't have a marketing automation platform. So something, it's both a really important revenue driver for them, and they could not turn it off and keep their business as it is today.
Yeah.
And it's also kind of as these marketing automation platforms are often in nature a bit integrated, and they probably need to look at it in a bigger, more composable way of what they do today. So kind of reinventing what the marketing automation platform should do, and they can do that by keeping it as a journey orchestration, and then make the data orchestration as a decoupled service with a CDP. Or they might look into where should that journey orchestration be? Should that be in the marketing automation platform that is a bit email centric and a bit profile centric, and not so much be the full data universe? Or should they look at moving the journey orchestration from the marketing automation platforms into the CDP? And you can see it's a battlefield today between the vendors. Where is that journey orchestration best sited in the marketing automation platform, and will they grow into have CDP capabilities, or will the CDP grows into having marketing automation capabilities? Because it's not just the turf. Journey orchestration just is not solely the turf for marketing automation platforms anymore.
Definitely. Yeah, so I've seen at least the way that we're talking to clients and the way our clients are using, for instance, a customer data platform together with a dealer in this case, you would have often quite different people and people with different skill sets in the two platforms. So the ones working in the CDP would probably be more data savvy and be a bit more nerdy and understanding so identity stitching and advanced target groups and audiences and such. Whereas the ones working in the marketing automation systems will be closer to the actual content. So they'll be one step closer to what the end customer actually experiences. But I guess there are many ways to sort of do that divide, who sits where and who does what. And if it's integrated, then maybe that's less of an issue, but then probably there are other trade-offs.
Yeah. But I think you'll see if you look at the more mature marketing organizations today, one very clear trend is that they are operating their customer data warehouse in a different way than you have done historically. So if you just go 5 years back, you would see the customer data warehouse was something that was owned by the IT department. It was an on-premise SQL database, and it was there firstly to serve business intelligence business user, and then secondly, marketing could get some data out of it.
Yeah, if there was time left.
Yeah, if there was time left. and today, mature organizations they have moved the customer data warehouse from on-prem to cloud, and they've moved into more flexible solutions like Snowflake and Azure Databricks and so forth. And the team that is operating it is a more data engineering, data scientist team, perhaps not even part of the IT organization. And now they're serving marketing equally as business intelligence team. So I think that's a really big difference.
Big shift,
Big shift is out there. And then CDP becomes that real-time enabler on top of that customer data warehouse. But you need to be able to build that capability of working with your customer data in a more flexible way, and being able to serve the full business, not just for analytics but also for activation. And that's probably a more important shift to make than to find out where should my journey orchestration reside. Should that be in the CDP or should that be in the marketing automation platform? I think it's more important to find out how should you work with your customer data warehouse. Who should own it? What technology should it be based on? And what use cases should that support?
Yeah, very interesting. I cannot help but think of this this model for that Scott Brinker made of different types of marketing technologists, where he's distinguishing between, I think, on the internal parts of the so he has like internal versus externally oriented. That's sort of one of the axes, and above you have sort of the admin types, and below you have sort of the modeler types. So I think he called the admins, he called sort of them the maestros, because he's trying to get a 4 5M alliteration. So it sounds as if there's a shift from the people working with the customer data from having been a team of maestros and admins and so on, administrators. It's now more and more a team of modelers, or people who are into sort of understanding the customer journeys and how can we support not only finance and sales modelings and so on, but also the actual growth marketers, the people are actually doing the execution.
Yeah, and there's some companies that have been there for a long time. So I had the pleasure of working with a large investment bank more than 10 years ago, and they they had really strong opinion and practice around the whole modeling and predicting customer behavior. So that was something that they considered being their intellectual property rights, and they always built that on top of low-level services. And I was there as a technology vendor of a marketing automation platform, and they kind of said, yes, that's fine, you come with a marketing automation platform. We're only going to serve it with data that we have produced and consumed and made intelligent in our own services, and it's just going to be a stupid engagement platform. You're never going to retrieve any intelligent data. You're never going to build any intelligence inside of your engagement platform, because we want to own it as an intellectual property right.
Disparaging for the MA vendor.
But kind of operating as what is mainstream today for a modern marketeer with a data engineering, data scientist team, and then disconnecting and still having it interconnected but decoupled from your engagement platforms and your engagement systems. So it's not something that is completely new and just invented in a few years. It's just become more mainstream, and the platforms are more accessible. So the real challenge in small, like Nordic organization, is to find that data engineer and that data scientist that you can have in your marketing team if you're a really small marketing team. So it's not the barrier of the technology or of the data, it is the barrier of talent.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, people versus skills. What good is the Ferrari if you don't have the team to drive it, or if you don't know where to go? So they were clearly ahead of their time, and I think there's a famous quote saying that the future is already here. It's just unevenly distributed, which this was also an example of these 10 years ago. This may be a good segue to generative AI. Is that where we can expect a lot of change to happen in the future? I saw the keynote on the Martech trends for 2024 by Frans Riemersma and Scott Brinker, and the increase, the acceleration of the additional amount of tools within Martech is staggering this year. I mean, I think that the growth almost doubled or tripled this year compared to the growth we had last year in percentage points. Is that going to help us with the content problem?
Yes, it will to a great extent, but still, again, you need to make your content consumable across channels. You need to make it into experience fragments so you can combine it with your customer profile and create a personalized experience. And you need to be able to control the validity of the content. And in some sectors, the validity is so important. So if you're in financial or health service, you cannot just make AI create some content and then do that in real time and just push it out into every channel. It has to go
cross
through.
Your fingers that it's not insulting anyone or advising on bad news.
Pretty strong legal governance process before it's valid for exposure. So there's still a lot of that, old-fashioned content management work processes you need to be good at, and you need to be good at it in a personalization context. So producing it as content fragments that can be consumed across all your channels if you're an omnichannel personalization strategy.
I've seen some good and some bad examples. I think generally with Gen AI, my attitude towards that is that first of all, there's a cost element to it. So I mean, it could and should save resources, but simply doing individualized content for any touch point for any customers, there's also a cost element to that. So if you are using Gen AI to create content for a moment that really doesn't matter for the customer, then it might be a waste of money. So you have created, a personalized email content for someone who doesn't open their emails. That's kind of a waste of money. Yeah. And if you do that at really big scale, then that's a lot of money wasted. And then there's the brand element that you describe here, the compliance element, where can we tolerate, a small email traffic accident? Is it okay that maybe the text in the subject line is a bit weird, and that on the image of this girl wearing the dress, she has 6 fingers, and how much damage will that do to our brand, and how much will it be just whatever, let's move on. So I've seen some of the companies that are more particular with their brand and cannot tolerate these traffic accidents, that they use Gen AI to help them create the different variants, and then they QA those to make sure that they are on brand and on point. And then those are sort of pre-produced content bites or snippets that they then use sort of classic predictive analytics to select between, or to rank them for each individual. That's one way of going about it. All right, coming back to Martech stack maturity. What is the the stack maturity is one thing, but on the other end, you have sort of the maturity for the marketing operations and how you're working with the different processes. How do they fit together? What is it? Who's in control? Which is more important, or how do you sync those?
Yeah, it's definitely the right approach to start with looking at the marketing operation organization when you look into maturity. So if you kind of take the two different point of the scale. So if you look at small companies that are digital born, what I often see there is that they start executing in a small digital savvy team, and they just drag platforms from the shelf and start working with them and integrate them. So it might be that they're using Zapier as an integration platform, and BigQuery as a data warehouse, and MailChimp as a ESP, but they're able, as a small team and data savvy team, to do really cool stuff. And then they mature, and then the operation becomes bigger, and they have to standardize more and go into more enterprise grade platforms. So it's actually the operation that matures first, and then they mature the stack afterwards.
Yeah.
And then at the other point of the scale, you see very mature marketing organization. It could be a telco or a retailer, where they have built their stack domain for domain, and there they have to kind of tear down that domain practice and make it cross domain, and rebuild the practice and rebuild the stack on top of that practice. So it's different approaches, and it's not so much just a maturity approach that is completely linear. It goes up and it goes down, and you have to tear down and rebuild depending on what is the organizational maturity of your operations.
Yeah. Interesting. So team or stack, that can swing both ways depending on the situation.
Yeah, I think so, especially on the context. Of how the organization looks like.
And how do you guide companies through this process? What is sort of a classic process where companies come to you with an issue and they say, we may be needing this, and then you talk them into, well, it's probably bigger because this has interconnections all over the enterprise. We need to go, like, how long is such a process, and what are sort of key events, or how does that look?
Yeah. So I've done these processes for the last 6-7 years, almost on a daily basis. So I have a pretty simple recipe now.
Simple is good.
And the first thing is to map the entire stack. To be able to show the totality of your Martech stack, so all the tools and all the data repositories and all the connections and data jobs that are running. So because that involves all stakeholders. So the business stakeholders and the IT stakeholders in each domains, and everybody can then see the totality of what is driving their customer experiences.
Yeah.
And what is driving the insights to deliver more intelligent customer experiences and
Is
so
this all
forth.
the way down to like small individual licenses for Canva, and or how deep do you go in mapping a stack?
I always go to be able to map the full kind of data ecosystem, and then sometimes also the full content ecosystem.
Okay.
But definitely the data ecosystem and the main content components there. And then when you have that that solid totality, you can put it into a reference architecture and say, well, your stack today looks like a stack where you're trying to integrate most of your Martech platforms into a CRM platform. So that's really good, but it doesn't really support real-time experiences, and it doesn't really support creating models based on digital behavior data that is semi-structured and not completely structured into your data warehouse. So it's easy to kind of say these are your boundaries, and if you want to go beyond that, you need to change your target architecture. And then the next point is to look at what are the actually delivered capabilities out of your stack. Do you have a Ferrari in the garage, or are you utilizing your platforms?
Yeah.
You know, to find out how efficient are your utilization of your current platform.
Yeah.
And then the next part, is the toughest part, is to try to define then what does the future good looks like. What are the use cases you want to execute? What are the capabilities you should have to be able to execute the use case, and what is the business value that these use cases should drive?
Yeah, so you can calculate backwards and see how big of an investment can this actually take.
Yeah, how big investment can it take? What are the where on the patient do we need to operate? Is it in the content workflow? Is it in the data? Is it analytics? Where is it that you really need to create new capabilities? So you need that direction, and that is the toughest part of the process, because then afterwards it's a close gap analysis on both, processes and technology and use cases, and it's a roadmap exercise where you can decompose what are the work streams and what are the costs and what are the technology components you need. So the hardest part is to define what does good look like.
Yeah, but there'll be different opinions on that, I suppose. That's where the real stakeholder mapping starts to blow up.
Yeah.
Can companies agree on sort of the? I suppose that if you can agree on the desired customer experience first, that would make a lot of things easier, because at least you can agree on that. And then sort of the technology stack needs to follow that somehow. I mean, are some things given if you sort of align on the customer experience?
You also need to be aligned on how you deliver the customer experience. So is it decentralized? Is it centralized? Where does the business logic stands for personalization and so forth? How
Who does what?
Yeah. So kind of the operations behind what it takes to deliver, and then you can say this is the right stack. This is the tools that this team needs to deliver this customer experience. But if you haven't defined how the team should deliver the experience, that's where you end up over investing in wrong platforms.
Yeah. So what does good look like is actually three questions. What does the good customer experience look like? What does the best way of working? What does good look like for our processes and our operations models and so on, our operating models? And what is good like then in terms of the architecture?
Yeah, and the business outcome.
Yeah.
So what should you expect from this investment? Is it 3-time ROI? Is it 10 times? So you're not lowballing or highballing in terms of your business plan, but because if you want to do something bigger than just shifting one platform from another, but actually changing your direction for your whole stack, it is a big budget, and you have to come to and ask for your boards of directors with perhaps a 2-year, 3-year plan, and a much larger budget than you're used to come and ask for. So you need a solid business case, otherwise you'll never get the approval.
Yeah. Looking into the future, we are discussing in the book the notion of a customer content platform, or the content layer, as Franz Riemersma and Scott Brinker also call it. Do you think we'll see that sort of platform emerge or something similar? What's your sort of your outlook towards sort of how we'll be managing content in the future?
Yeah. There are definitely two different schools here. There is the headless composable way, and there's the integrated structured way.
Yeah.
So the marketing suites, they will kind of go into a more structured integrated way. So content is managed to be able to be deliverable in their channels.
Mm-hmm.
And if you go really headless composable, you want to be able to have a content work stream that is uniform, and then at the very last end, you will split it into different channels.
Yeah.
So you only produce content once and you consume it anywhere.
So you have a message that can be used in any channel, basically.
In any channel, and if you're having a really hyper-personalized strategy, it is a experience fragment that can be combined for a message in any channels.
Yeah,
so
an
you're really
experience fragment.
so you're really industrializing the way that you're producing content, and that's in most cases it's it's again, it's not the technology that is hard to do. If you go headless composable, it is the ways of working that is hard to retrain, and the organization where the editors are used to create a perfect email or a perfect social media post. But now you need to rethink it as something that can be combined of a lot of experience fragments. And I'm just producing content into a repository. I'm not choosing who's going to see that content in what channel at what time.
Decisioning is being made somewhere else.
Yeah.
I think that goes very much in line with the sort of within the book what we define as a message, which is sort of the core of what you're trying to make someone do or see or hear or feel. So sort of the core of a message is a call to action almost. So the intent that you have with a customer, how do you put that in? It sounds like that's sort of the same as you are calling an experience fragment. We're talking about Martech, atomization, and aggregation. So atomization on the one hand, where you see a lot of new tools coming in to fix more smaller tasks, but also aggregation at a company level, because you really need to put that composable stack together yourself. How do they impact sort of the development of marketing technologies?
Yeah. So I think the aggregation we've really seen with the big suites. So kind of being wanted to own all the core systems, but then also actually becoming, the addressable market from my point of view is becoming smaller because it doesn't fit that many companies, I think. Where the atomization with more components, I think fits really well into more mid-sized companies. And especially as they mature in their digital marketing, they can become more composable, especially if they industrialize on top of the flexibility of the components. So if they just use the components in, one person use one tool and they do whatever they can do within the tool, they will not, get to the full level of marketing execution and getting the full return. But if they industrialize on top of a layer of individual interconnected components, then they can do a lot of cool stuff. But it requires that you industrialize on top of these components of services.
What do you mean by industrialize?
Yeah, otherwise it doesn't work. If you have 20 different tools there, and you have 20 different people working within their tools, they will operate within their small part of the domain. So you need to have some cross-functional processes and omni-channel experiences on top of those components. And that requires, the ability to standardize and uniform and to work with efficiency and progress into doing test, measure, learn practices and so forth. So you have to industrialize your cross-functional operation to get the value out of a composable stack. Otherwise, you just get the flexibility, you don't get the scalability out of the stack.
That relates very well to sort of the three maturity levels in the pyramid of personalization that we also use in the book. That as you are progressing as a team towards more personalized experiences across channels. That also means some changes in the way that you organize, from, for instance, being first pretty campaign focused to towards being more split campaign MA focused towards being journey focused. And in order to be journey focused, you need to work omnichannel and really find out which customers to move where, depending on where they are in the journey, regardless of which channel that we meet them on. And that sets a whole new standard for how you produce things, how you produce content, how you produce flows, and how you organize and which groups you work together in. So that just a reflection from what you said. So we're drawing towards an end here. So final but one question. Where can our listeners learn more about your work and get in touch with you or Marchitechs for further guidance?
Yeah. So you're very welcome to reach out. We are a small team. We're 2 people right now, so
You're
our
not sold
bandwidth
out.
is not that big. Sometimes we are, and sometimes there's some free time there. So you're very welcome to reach out. And also, if you want to go for a deep dive into CDP architectures, we recently released an ebook that explains the different architectures and how you find the right fit for your organization. So that could definitely also be a starting point to get to know us. But otherwise, just reach out.
Great. The last question that I always ask guests on the show here: your own personal favorite example of personalization that you've experienced as a consumer, what would that be?
Yeah. There I'm really old-fashioned. So
many people refer to like real classic experiences on this.
Yeah. So one of my favorite TV shows is Cheers, and especially when Norm gets into the bar and everybody shouts, "Hey Norm!"
Yeah.
I just love that. I'm a sucker for it. So when I go into my local butcher and into my local wine store and they know who I am, and if say hi Martin, I'm just sold. They can sell me whatever they want to do afterwards. So that real personal experience is my favorite. When it comes to the digital experience, I'm more practical. So I really like a good pre-flight flow. So where I'm guided to when should you have booked your flight, when should you drive home, here you can park, what is your shopping you need to do before you get to the gate, here's your gate, where they're communicating with me digital on my physical journey and make it easy for me to be a consumer. I just love that.
And who does that best, you think? So is that the airports or is that the airlines? And where did you find sort of the best match for your completely unrealistic expectations for this?
You're really nailing it there. That it's between the airports and the airlines. That they don't really interconnect that well. I guess Copenhagen Airport is okay at doing it right now. But it would be great that if it was a really interconnected experience between the airlines and the airports and the car rentals and so forth, that makes it hassle-free for me to go from my front door and into my final destination. I would love that.
We're working with Air Greenland, and I think they're actually doing this very well. Maybe also because of the fact that it's not like the biggest airline in the world. So they're actually able to sit together in the same room. The silos are not that big, and they're actually making a good case on that. So thank you for joining, Martin. We've come to an end. We've almost been talking for an hour. So thank you so much for joining and for taking the time and for sharing your insights. It's been really wonderful having this conversation with you.
You're so very welcome. Thanks a lot for having the opportunity.
And to the listeners / viewers, I'll just say thank you for joining this week's episode of the Hello FirstName podcast. Remember, you can download a free abstract of the book, which I'll put a link to in the show notes. The models in the book, it's full of colorful models that you can put into a PowerPoint slide and immediately sound more clever than your colleagues without necessarily having read the book, which I find is always a nice thing with business books. You can download those models at omnichannelinstitute.com/resources. And apart from that, I hope to see you or hear you, or that you'll be listening to me next week, where we'll be having a classic audiobook chapter 21. So thanks for listening, and thanks for participating. Thank you for listening in on this episode of Hello FirstName. Remember that all models and even a written abstract of the book are available for download. You'll find the link in the show notes. In our next episode, which is a classical audiobook chapter, we'll be listening to Chapter 21, Governance. Some marketers don't particularly like processes, especially the ones that are implied from other departments or even by law. However, as we shall see, reaching the more mature levels of the pyramid of personalization requires marketers to install governance and even build their own processes that facilitate and enable the personalized customer journey.